Good morning, everybody. Welcome to this special business meeting for the District of Squamish for Tuesday, July 8th. Holland Squallen, plus Tuktamak, plus Squamish Okmeo. As always, we're gathered to do our work today on the traditional and unceded territory of the Squamish Nation. Please be advised that this council meeting is being live streamed, recorded, and will be available to the public to view on the District of Squamish website following the meeting. If you have concerns, please notify the corporate officer present at the meeting. Could I have someone move adoption of the agenda? Moved by Councillor French, second by Councillor Anderson. All in favor? Motion carries. So our first order of business under staff reports is a discussion around 39900 Government Road Affordable Housing and Supportive Housing Frontage Fee Waiver and Capital Grant. And I just wanted to point out we do have Councillor Stoner joining us remotely today, so she's not at the she's here, but we'll get underway. I'll turn it over to staff to run us through the presentation.
Jonas Milishki, Senior Director of Community Development. And with me today is Jay Sternino, Project Engineer, and Brent McMurtry, our Manager of Transportation. And I'll note that this is Jay's first official trip to District of Squamish Council meeting. So today we're bringing a request to Council. The request came from BC Housing and Housing Squamish for a partial servicing and fee waiver for the Government Road Affordable and Supportive Housing projects, as well as the reallocation of CMHC grant funding from 2024 towards an infrastructure grant for this project. So a little bit of background for Council. In 2023, the district completed a housing needs assessment, which indicated a substantial need for additional housing in the district in the order of 685 new units per year. A considerable portion of these new units should be affordable to meet our affordability needs in Squamish. The district applied in 2023 for the CMHC Housing Accelerator Fund, and in 2024 we were successful in receiving a 4-year commitment for $7 million. Out of that first year of spending the CMHC funding, we had almost 600,000 that was unspent, and 500 of that 600,000 is unallocated. So we've carried the amounts into 2025, and the 500 could be allocated towards the infrastructure grant. In 2023, Council endorsed the Housing Squamish to pursue pre-development funding for this site and endorsed agreement in principle to lease the site to Housing Squamish and BC Housing. And in 2025, a motion was released endorsing a supportive housing project with BC Housing on the southern portion of the property and agreement in principle to lease the property. And I'll just preface the presentation that this is about the servicing for the site, so it's not so much about the actual project itself. The project itself will move through a different process in terms of development permitting and building permitting. So the site is 1.2 hectares. It's owned by the district. The property was established in 2022 via a survey of an old road, essentially creating a new parcel. The site is largely vacant, and it's the site of an old Highway 99. The property does contain a sewer force main and a gas line along the western edge of the property. And so that is what the request for the infrastructure grant is to support the relocation of those services. Future Pioneer Way extension anticipated along the east side of the parcel. However, the precise alignment of that extension hasn't yet been finalized. So just a very quick overview. The affordable housing project consists of approximately 100 units. Housing Squamish is hoping to make the application this month to BC Housing for funding. which will further determine the sort of the details of that project. And the supportive housing project is proposed on the southern side and is between 60 and 65 units funded by BC Housing. So in terms of servicing, the subdivision development control bylaw requires that all properties undergoing development install off-site works and services along its frontage. And normally it goes to the halfway mark of the road. The servicing agreement is the tool that the district implements the subdivision development control bylaw. So it's up to the district engineer to determine the exact extent of the works and services required by each development. Pioneer Way Extension Project is a development cost charge project, meaning that the district would be collecting funds from other developments to support all DCC projects. Key to improving access, this extension is key to improving access to Business Park, a diverse commercial and industrial traffic away from Government Road and the North Yards neighborhood. Phase 1 of the Pioneer Way Extension was constructed in 2021. Phase 2 involved the construction of underground utilities, multi-use path and lighting, and installed the road base to the final grade. So along that phase 2 extension. Completion of the second and third phases are not currently in the district's 2025-29 financial plan due to budget constraints. Work is undergoing to finalize the road alignment in consideration of the surrounding landowners. But what we know now is that essentially we do not have enough funds to complete this project in terms of DCC funds in the near future. So the project, the affordable and supportive housing, fronts both Pioneer Way and Government Road. Would be required to upgrade both frontages. BC Housing and Housing Squamish are requesting a reduction to the roadworks for Pioneer Way and Government Road to improve the feasibility. The application process with BC Housing is very competitive, given the increase in construction costs. And so every opportunity is looked at to reduce the project costs. So the staff have been working with BC Housing and Housing Squamish to understand what is kind of the minimum required to support this project. And so what is proposed is ultimate roadworks installation along Government Road North frontage, so that purple area along Government Road, on-site multi-use path through the northeast frontage, so that's the yellow area, as well as off-site along Government Road to the intersection with Centennial Way. Reduced roadworks for the south portion of Pioneer Way, so that's the blue area. So in lieu of a multi-use path, this would have a sort of partial road build, and then reduced roadworks for the south portion of Pioneer Way in lieu of, sorry, I'm mixing up my slides. The north portion would have a multi-use path running through the site, essentially. The south portion would have a road that acts as a multi-use path, but both are at a reduced standard. So what would be waived by the district is North Pioneer Way Ultimate Road Works, value of $465,000, and then South Pioneer Way Ultimate Road Works, value of almost $500,000. The capital grant for service reallocation, so this would be, if council is supportive, we would allocate the $500,000 towards a $1.3 million project to relocate those works, and the rest of it would have to be covered by BC Housing. The servicing agreement fee waiver, so the value of the servicing agreement it's approximately $40,000. This is based on the value of the works. The bylaw allows council to waive fees for not-for-profit, affordable, and rental housing, including supportive housing. So the total assistance related to infrastructure would be $1.496 million. And so today we have 3 recommendations to council. One is to endorse waiving a frontage portion of works and services as described in the report, endorse the allocation of CMHC funds towards the infrastructure grant, and waive all Schedule 6 fees, which is the engineering fees for servicing the site. And I'll turn it over back to council.
Thank you very much for the presentation. And maybe we'll leave that.
Should I?
Yeah, maybe, actually, if you don't mind pulling down, we may need the slides again in the conversation, but just so I can keep track of everyone participating. Council, who would like to get us started with questions? Go ahead, Councilor Pengill.
Yeah, thanks. A few questions in different areas. One, for clarity, what items in this that, if we sort of waive things in terms of this particular application, could we still put in a DCC bylaw? And, part of it may be on a sort of, in my mind, a latecomer type approach, like, for example, moving the infrastructure, some of these things, could those still be put into a DCC bylaw? And we understand it may take a while to actually get that funding, but can that be done? Or which of the things are we limited to, like only these specific things can go in a DCC bylaw ever?
Through the chair, so the project, the Pioneer Way extension, is already a DCC project. It's captured in the bylaw. The issue that we're seeing is that essentially there's not enough funds coming into that bylaw to support all the projects. And so we're having to prioritize projects. And so this project is a priority, but there's other projects ahead of it that require funding. And the funding we have is insufficient.
So I think I understand it, but I guess, in my mind, yes, it may take a long time before we get there, but when we get there, the DCC funds in our bylaw could cover everything, including the infrastructure costs. Like they're part of that. We're not, by taking this approach, saying we're precluding ourselves from ever capturing that from a DCC bylaw sometime in the future.
Through the chair, no, we're not precluding from capturing it in the bylaw, and theoretically the bylaw should collect enough funds for all the projects in it, but the reality is that it's, that is just not the case. It really depends on the level of development that goes on in town that pays the DCCs and the priorities in the bylaw.
Okay, thank you. And then, we've got Fortis, and with a massive project, I would say, negative community impacts, including in housing and so on. So I'm wondering what conversations we've had with Fortis about them covering the cost of moving their existing pipeline, like where that conversation stands, what their response has been.
We haven't had any conversations with Fortis about moving the gas line. It's standard practice that a developer has to move services. And so in this case, as the property owner, we've been asked to participate in the relocation of those services.
Okay, I've asked about this previously. I thought my understanding was that we were reaching out to Fortis. So that's something I would want to understand before we're putting the bill. I think given the context of everything, I would expect Fortis to step up here, but we'll see. I guess the other piece I'm trying to understand, because I guess when I look at the needs of this community and how far we can get from this project, making sure that things like sidewalks and multi-use paths and so on are to sort of the standard we put everywhere in Squamish, like sort of a fairly high standard. And the road piece doesn't seem particularly valuable to this development or even the nearby neighborhood. And it's not going to be completed anyways as a functional road. So I guess I'm trying to wrap my head around, rather than putting any investment into an incomplete road that's of little sort of immediate benefit, can we or are we making sure that all that active transit and other infrastructure is sort of at the maximum quality we would do throughout the district?
Through the chair, Brett McMurtry, Manager of Transportation. So yeah, thank you for the question. It's something that we've contemplated how best to serve our community members with connections through this development, and recognizing the plans for Pioneer Way and the existing infrastructure that's built. And so there's currently a multi-use path that runs along the south side of Pioneer Way through phase 1 and then onto the east side of Pioneer Way's Pioneer Way through phase 2, with a future plan to build out a southbound protected bike lane and sidewalk on the west side of Pioneer Way. And so we felt this balance of providing a sort of interim road connection that could be used as a multi-use path continuation in the near term as this development progresses would allow us not to construct infrastructure that doesn't align with the future plan of a southbound facility and sidewalk, yet still retain a connection from the existing multi-use path up to Government Road. Kind of a lot to follow. I'm not sure, seeing faces that maybe, yeah, if you have a...
So is this a sort of fully built out multi-use path with lighting and so on, and also a road, or just that and no road, or it's like a sort of the standard, like there's no lighting, it's a basic multi-use path? Like, what are we talking about here? And what, like, I'm not clear on, is there an actual road proposed or not?
Yeah, through the chair. So through the southern section of the site where the future alignment of Pioneer Way is confirmed, the request is for the half road to be constructed, but not the active transportation facilities. But recognizing that that road doesn't provide a connection and won't be serving motor vehicle traffic, the thinking is that that section of road would be used as a continuation of the multi-use path, which is currently only on the east side, south of that site. And then once you're into the northern section of the development, there's a multi-use path, a fully developed multi-use path with lighting. There's lighting on the southern section along the roadway as well, but that would fulfill the connection from the southern portion up to Government Road. So you would have, in effect, a multi-use path that is of equivalent level of service to what is existing on the southern section, phase 3 of Pioneer Way, phase 2 of Pioneer Way, continuing up to Government Road, but using a mix of what the ultimate infrastructure would look like and kind of an interim condition.
So is it not possible, or is the reason why we wouldn't, given that there's not a vehicle access road the whole way, just sort of say, don't bother with any investment on road at this point until we can complete it. Instead, put all the money that we are asking for into a fully built out active transit portion and deal with the road later when we can do it completely.
Through the chair. So yeah, thanks again for the question. That was considered with the ultimate plan for Pioneer Way not being a multi-use path on the west side of Pioneer Way. We felt as staff that it made more sense to build this section, the southern section, on road that could be used as a multi-use pathway in the interim without building infrastructure that ultimately doesn't align with the future plan. So it allows us to build the cross section that has been envisioned for the rest of Pioneer Way and minimizes work that would need to be, I guess, modified or redone in the future with that multi-use path being changed to a separated sidewalk and southbound bike lane in the future. And since we're not able to get the east side of Pioneer Way where the multi-use path is planned to go in the future, constructed through this development, it was that balance of how can we minimize the amount of rework that would be needed in the future.
Okay, thanks. I'll leave it there for now.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Stoner, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, through the chair. And so I'm not sure who's doing IT today, but I don't have the raise hand function. It is not working on my end. If somebody can try and address that. But my first question was to follow on Councillor Pettingill's question. I hear in our subdivision control bylaw, it's common to just ask for half roads. Can you, like, do we often do that? Where we just get a half road delivered by a development?
Through the chair, for this project, we are just asking for them to pave to the center line, which would be a 3.5 meter wide drive aisle, which is similar to a 3 meter wide multi-use path. And so for the south portion of the site's frontage along Pioneer Way, we would be asking for just the half portion of roadworks that would act as an interim condition and a multi-use path until an ultimate condition could be built out at a further point in time.
Okay, and with or without this development, based on our current financial planning, the ultimate build out of Pioneer Way is well beyond 2030. Is that correct?
Through the chair, that's correct. It's both in the transportation master plan, the implementation section of the plan shows this as a long-term priority, so something that falls in the 10 to 15-year range. But as Mr. Vanescus noted, our DCC reserves are not sufficient to meet the timelines of many of these projects. And so without understanding what development contributions there will be in the future, there's uncertainty of when that would be constructed, but definitely not within the 2030 horizon.
Okay, thank you for that. My other question was just around kind of clarity and framing of this report, where I appreciate it's really important for us to fully understand what the costs are that we are putting in potentially as the district for this project. But just to clarify, like, this is a district-owned site. And so even if we wanted to build something that was district owned, we would then be on the hook for doing all of the frontage improvements plus the additional 1.3 million for moving the underground infrastructure. Is that correct?
Through the chair, that is correct. As essentially we'd be acting as a developer. If we were building, say, a facility of our own, we would have to consider all of these costs as our costs.
So we can put for the, so this is an example for the one, you said it was 1.3 million to move the underground infrastructure, and we're putting 500,000 of grant monies into that, and our development partners are putting in 800,000. Would that be the correct breakdown?
That's correct. That's based on a Class D estimate. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. And then I did just want to confirm that we are requiring of this development to do full improvements along Government Road, correct? To the roundabout?
Through the chair, we are only asking them to build out the ultimate or full road improvements along their immediate frontage up to where the multi-use path connects along their east property line.
Okay. And then
From
do we
their
have-
east property,
oh,
sorry.
No, go
From
ahead.
their east property line, we're asking them to build out a 3-meter multi-use path to connect with the Centennial Way intersection to ensure there's an active transportation corridor or connectivity.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. And then do we have a final understanding of where the alignment for phase 3 of Pioneer Way will connect in to Government Road? Has that been finalized at this point?
Through the chair, it hasn't been finalized yet. We're exploring what the preferred alignment is and dealing with property owners in the surrounding areas. So there, in your report, you'll see a sort of interim connection that shows a viable connection to Government Road on district-owned land. And then we're continuing to work to ensure that the preferred alignment can be realized.
So in the hypothetical situation that this was a for-profit development, and we didn't have that final alignment solidified at this time, would we be requiring them to build out the full extension of Pioneer Way, or would we, like, how would we handle this if this was either not our land or a private developer?
Through the chair, I think a similar approach with an interim treatment to the north of the site would likely be recommended until the preferred alignment could be further understood.
Thank you very much.
Through the chair, if I can add to that, we would likely also require them to perform design and security deposit or design and cost estimates rather for the north portion of Pioneer Way. as well as require a security deposit for that work. In the case of this project, we are recommending that the ultimate design and security deposit for the north portion of Pioneer Way is being waived.
Councillor Pettingill.
Yeah, just a procedural question. I'm seeing public comments come in the WebEx chat, and my understanding is that because that's not a tracked or recorded mechanism, we can't accept commentary that way. Just wanting to check that we are doing things properly here.
I'll just check with our corporate officer. I hadn't seen that. Thank you.
Thank you. Through you, Chair, the messaging function should have been turned off for this meeting, but because we had it on, we decided to just leave it on for this item. The person online who is sending messages has been messaged privately to let them know just how they can provide feedback to council. So thanks.
All right. Thank you, team, for catching that and correcting it. I'll go around. Councillor Stoner, did you have any additional questions, or can I move around the table? Any other questions here, Council? Go ahead, Councillor French.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor Herford. Recognizing that there are active development proposals for Lot 15 Aspen Road and Lot 14 Aspen Road, I'm wondering, in light of the long timelines that we're hearing for completion of Pioneer, what, if any, influence would future development of those two properties have on speeding up the timeline for build out of Pioneer?
Through the chair, yes, I definitely understand that there's active development projects within the area, and part of the rationale behind the approach taken for the southern portion of the site of getting the road, half road constructed to a sort of interim condition, ultimate condition, is thinking around what those sites and opportunities to advance the road works on those sites are. The one limiting factor is the intersection with Centennial Way, and still work needed to confirm the alignment. So as much of the corridor that can be constructed through development reduces the total project cost for the district when it comes to delivering the capital project associated with that, or if there are other developments in the future. So it will support expediting or at least reducing the cost, which may make it more viable in the future with the DCC reserves as they are.
Good. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you. So my question is, a little bit earlier, the term Class D estimate came up for the relocation of the in-ground utilities, and our cash contribution is, I just want to make sure that I understand that cash contribution from the Housing Accelerator Fund, the federal funds, that's the set amount, and then the risk from Class D to built costs lives with the proponents in this case. Is that correct?
That's correct. It's just an infrastructure grant, one-time grant allocation, and then the project has to take on the ultimate relocation of the services and the costs associated with it.
Okay, thank you. I just want to make sure that aligns with my understanding, so I just wanted to confirm that. Thank you. Council, any other questions? We do have a recommendation before us. Councillor Stoner, your hand is working. Go ahead.
Look at that. Thank you. So I just wanted to clarify one more thing in terms of the waive requirements for Pioneer Way South, going back to, again, one of Councillor Pettingill's questions. Can you reiterate why we are waiving the street and trail lighting requirements, given that this is likely going to be like the most functional multi-use path for the foreseeable future?
Through the chair, at this point in time, we just have a kind of indicative level design, and we are doing our best to minimize costs to the proponent.
I appreciate that. I think going back to like, how do we make sure this is like the most functional Like this is an interim solution, but it's a medium length interim solution. And so I wonder if like there are options for reducing the amount of paving in order to allow for some level of lighting. It is a really dark stretch through there. It'll be less dark if the development goes ahead because it'll be a little less forested. But I just thinking of like the functionality of that trail space, some lighting would probably go a long way.
Do we have more comments on the lighting of the?
Yeah, through the chair. So some additional consideration is the parcel on the east side of the site, and the recommendation is to maintain the multi-use path that is on that east side. And so really thinking of this on-road connection on the southern portion of this site as interim, and seeing as there's active development on that east side, that the multi-use path would then connect through that east side. So I think some of the thinking from staff was that there may be rationale to ensure that the future, or I guess, lighting design is in line with what is proposed for the ultimate construction, and that if we could have the multi-use path through the lot 15 parcel, that would suffice in the interim condition.
So can I just clarify on that? Will there be lighting on the multi-use path? On the on-site multi-use path?
Through the chair, not sure of that yet. I'd say that, again, best practice, as you're aware, is to include lighting for multi-use paths, and so that would likely be what we would hold the proponent to, but I'm not sure of those details, and I don't think the design is advanced to that point.
Thank you, Councillor Penningill.
So when can we ensure that or say that is a requirement? And yeah, I'll leave it. I'll start there.
Through the chair, lighting design is typically handled through the detailed design as part of the site servicing agreement, which we have not started yet for this parcel.
Okay, and just to be 100% clear, because we're talking about a path on the east side, west side, and interim and future and so on. At what point in time will there be a path through this area that is lit?
Thank you for the question. So as the project develops, so the existing condition is there's lighting on Pioneer Way Phase 2 and no lighting on the continuation, which is an interim multi-use path that connects from the termination of that up to Government Road. Through the development, there's a commitment to maintain a connection through this project, and the future work for this would construct this on-street multi-use path facility in the interim. Lighting for that southern phase would probably not occur as the agreement is proposed so far until lot 15 builds out their frontage and the full frontage requirements are constructed at that point.
So I'm not a road engineer, but my understanding, and maybe it's a misunderstanding, is that constructing a road, or what's required to do a road, even a half one side of a road, is significantly more involved and expensive than a typical multi-use path. And so I'm wondering if we just sort of, if the expectation was a multi-use path with lighting from the north to the south of this whole parcel, if that would be likely cheaper than what's being proposed, which includes a half proper road.
Go ahead, Ms. Glende.
Thank you. Through the chair, while I appreciate council's questions and concerns around lighting, I think we are getting beyond the scope of today's decision, which is about the infrastructure funding.
Yeah. Go ahead, Councillor Pettingill, with that in mind, please.
Yeah, well, with respect, I'm trying to wrap my head around, we're being asked to waive things and waive what we're requesting. And so for me, what I'm comfortable waiving is really tied to what's not being waived or what's going to be expected. So I'm really trying to reconcile what's being asked to waive versus, what the result will be.
Through the chair, it's difficult for staff to advise council what the result will be because we haven't done the detailed design. The adjacent projects have not been designed. So what we're looking for is endorsement of the things that we know are needed, that the project has requested. And then we're going to go away if Housing Squamish is successful in their application for funding. That's what's going to kick off the servicing agreement discussions. And I think we hear loud and clear that council would prefer to have this this path lit. And so staff will do our best to see how this project can at least partially deliver that and other projects as well.
Councillor Pettingill.
So as proposed then, are we making the decision today about whether or not we're requiring a half road, or is that also a future decision?
Through the chair, don't think there will be another decision that's necessary by council after today, because it's going to be up to staff to finalize the servicing requirements for the servicing agreement. What we're asking today from council is to endorse partially waiving the frontage requirements as described in the report. But the exact details of what the end condition will be of this multi-use path and the road, we're not there yet. But these costs are necessary for Housing Squamish to put in a request for funding to BC Housing. So they need to know that we're okay with partial improvements along Pioneer Way and part of Government Road. But unfortunately, we're too early in the design process to give council all the details associated with that work.
So would it be right to say what is included is maybe a step above a placeholder, but was needed to generate some funds or some cost estimates for the types of work that would be required, and then those details will come in the detailed design work that happens in the servicing agreement? This is sort of what I've extrapolated from here. I think we're getting caught a lot in the fine, the granular details that are yet to come, but we've got this bigger concept piece that of the question we're actually being asked today. And I can see why I had that concerns around some of the design details, but I didn't see them reflected directly in the motions as well. So is that roughly where we are? You needed these sort of design work to put some dollars to this, and then can sort out what to do with those exactly in the next steps.
That's correct. Staff will be finalizing the servicing agreement and working with the applicants on the details of that. That never comes to council. We're just looking for council's endorsement that staff will be waiving those requirements.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Pettingill.
But if I may, the resolution proposed for us speaks to, if I understand it, waiving specific aspects as described in the report. So it does seem to be quite specific to which things are being waived, and that is my concern. So I wonder if we need a different resolution that allows staff to incorporate what we've said or whatever, because it doesn't actually seem like it's a later decision. We're deciding on the specific details right now by this resolution.
We just heard that wasn't. Do you have any additional clarity staff can provide on this point? I know that it's the third point that the third bullet point there, the first. So I know this is well thought out as to what that was. Do you have additional rationale to provide for the language there?
The only additional rationale I would provide is that as I think it was mentioned previously, the detailed work hasn't been completed yet for the design of this road and ultimately what the build out is going to look like. We have a good idea of what will be necessary and what this project will be required to do, but the details are yet to be determined. And so we're giving council a general idea of what will be required. But it's a complex area. It's a district development cost charge project with adjacent developments also plugging into that work.
Okay, thank you. I've got Councillor Hamilton's hand, and then I've got Councillor Stoner online. And I just, as a point, it looks like I might have a forced restart on my computer. So if I drop off the screen, I'm still here, and I'll get back as soon as I can. But I'll go to Councillor Hamilton.
Thanks very much. It seems we've got a classic cart and horse problem. It takes, in order for us to understand exactly how much things are going to cost and how many fees and exactly which things we need to waive, the project needs to advance to a certain point. The project can't advance to that point until we have said to BC Housing and Housing Squamish that we will waive some fees. So there's carts and horses here. Is there any way, and I see the concern here from some councillors seems to be that they want to know which pieces are being waived, which structural pieces are being waived. But it seems to me like staff have presented, this is roughly what we'd be waiving, and here's how much it'll cost. Is there any way in the motion, rather than specifying what we will be waiving, to specify a value that we will waive? Is that a mechanism we could do to get around this conundrum?
Sure. I'm just going to go to Councillor Stoner if I can, just to make sure we get all the questions, and then they might need to be discussed at the timeout as well. So if we're okay with that. Councillor Stoner?
Yeah, thank you. Through the chair. I had two questions. One that might help clarify where we're going with this multi-use path. In the staff report, it does, as this is on page 5 of 10 of the staff report, it says, in response to the request from BC Housing Squamish, staff are proposing the following as required works and services. And the third bullet point says reduce roadworks for the south portion of Pioneer Way in lieu of the multi-use path along the southeast frontage that was originally proposed by the proponents. And I'm just wondering if staff can articulate again why they are opting for a reduced works of the south portion as opposed to a full multi-use path in that location.
Through the chair, thanks for the question. So this is back to the ultimate plan for Pioneer Way and the plan for the west side of Pioneer Way through this southeast frontage to have a sidewalk and a separated bike lane. And so if we got the development to construct a multi-use path, we would have infrastructure that doesn't align with what our future plan is. So that would require either discontinuous future sidewalk and southbound protected bike lane, or the district to come in and reconstruct that section that is constructed through this development.
Thank you for that clarity. That is helpful to me as to why we wouldn't be putting in the multi-use path, because I don't want to be rebuilding infrastructure in 5 or 6 years' time. My second question was on the resolution that's before us. We also talk about waiving all Schedule 6 fees under the District of Squamish fees and charges bylaw. And I thought that was something that we already did for affordable housing projects, or is this new? I thought that this was just general practice.
Through the chair, we waive planning and building and environment fees already. Like the bylaw has a a straight waiver fee, so that doesn't need to be a decision of council. It's already waived through the bylaw, but not Schedule 6 fee. So that is still subject to council approval.
And have we done that for any other affordable housing projects in the past?
Through the chair, yes. I believe we did it for the Spirit Creek affordable housing.
Okay, we had a requested timeout, and just before we go there, I think that first bullet point in the staff recommendation, I think implies that there's detailed design work to happen at a future state, and perhaps some language to that effect in the motion itself might be required to have council to give comfort to council. I'm just going to lob that suggestion out there to rattle around in everyone's mind while we take a recess or a quick recess is fine. Ms. Glende, I'll just look to you for time. How long would you like? Is 5?
Let's round it up to 10, just for leaving and coming back. Thanks.
Okay, that's fine. Okay, so we'll recess and we'll reconvene in 10 minutes. Thank you. Welcome back, everybody. We're back from a short recess for staff to confer, and I'll turn it back to staff for reply. Go ahead, Ms. Glende.
Thank you. Through the mayor, we had a question around value, and then also council had asked staff to consider amending the motion in terms of design of the multi-use pathway, particularly around lighting. In terms of the latter, we'll just respectfully remind council that the servicing agreement and development permit for development of this nature is delegated to staff. So we don't recommend that council add that to the motion. And then secondly, around the value, Mr. Velaniskis will answer that question for council.
Thank you. Through the chair. So the one thing to highlight for council is that the ultimate roadworks on Pioneer Way and Government Road won't be designed enough because they're not being built at this time, won't be designed enough for us to actually know the more detailed value. So for that reason, we wouldn't recommend that council attach value to this, to the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pettingill.
Yeah, thanks. I'm just trying to wrap my head. I understand the caution about wading into stuff that's been delegated, but the resolution says endorse waiving the frontage portion of the works and services required. So to me, the proposed resolution already sort of asks us to wade into that, unless I'm misunderstanding. Like, to me, speaking about waiving frontage portions and so on, like we are already, like that's sort of what we're doing here, or like, am I missing a piece?
Through the chair, we're looking for general endorsement that there will be things that will be waived here, and that's why we didn't list the specifics of that waiver in the motion.
I think this could be a case of maybe perhaps receiving more detail than was needed for the decision. Which, but I'll go to Councillor Stoner.
Just to that point, and for clarity, this isn't technically something that actually needs a council approval. It is technically a delegated authority. Is that true?
That is correct. For the frontage waiver, yeah.
Frontage waiver, yeah. With that, I'm happy to move the staff recommendation if you're ready for that, Chair.
I think that's where we are. Councillor French has seconded that. Councillor Stoner, would you like to speak to it?
Yeah, I would like to speak to this, and thanks to staff and the proponents for all the work to get us to this point. I think hearing the questions that have been raised today, and I know some of the concerns that I heard at the open house a few weeks ago around ensuring that this development does provide as much connectivity and community infrastructure, especially for improving the safety, walking and cycling in particular through the community, is important. I think those are the questions that you're hearing from council today. But I do trust that staff will secure as much as possible from this proponent, and also recognizing that this really is a partnership that we are building here with BC Housing and Squamish Housing. Affordable housing has long been a priority, at least for me as a councillor, for this council as a whole, as part of our strategic plan. And in our previous council, when we put in a lot of effort to actually set up Housing Squamish to really focus on delivering housing. And we knew that this was going to be an all hands on deck type of affair. And here we are in the midst of that, really trying to make the few parcels of land that we own functional for housing. And in reflection of that, Mr. Velaniskis in his presentation did speak to how this piece of parcel came to be, which was the closing of a road. And so we are really kind of turning over every stone to try and find possible functional pieces of land. And those are often expensive to build on. And this is one example of doing so. But I do think that in many ways, this is actually, while the staff report and the discussion here is talking about waiving of fees and maybe seeing as a delay in delivery of critical infrastructure, I actually think An alternative narrative to that or perspective is that this is actually in advancing infrastructure investment earlier than we otherwise would have seen in this part of our community. So completion of phase 2 and phase 3 of Pioneer Way are actually not currently in our 5-year financial plan and maybe not even on our 10-year financial plan. And this project is allowing us to advance some of that work before we were probably anticipating to do so ourselves with external funding from BC Housing. If we are successful in the application. So there's still a big if there. But even the moving of the underground infrastructure, which is something that we would have to do at the cost of $1.3 million, we can now do that using a federal grant of $500,000 for our portion and then $800,000 from external agencies to help support that cost. So in many ways, I actually think this is a cost-effective project as well as it delivering on one of the core things that we know our community needs exponentially more of, which is affordable and supportive housing. And so for that reason, I think that this makes good sense for us to be taking this step and working in partnership with BC Housing and Housing Squamish to get this parcel as functional as possible. I trust that the interim solutions that we work on together will make sure that we address as much of the community safety and transportation needs as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll go to you, the seconder, Councillor French.
Thank you, Mayor Herford. I was comfortable with this staff recommendation from the beginning. And one of the things that I was sensing in the set of recommendations was learnings from the recent Tantalus Road experience, where, in my opinion, we've got a bit of overkill in the active transportation world. And what I see here is logical, and it makes a ton of sense to me. And I was happy to hear from staff that there has been some consideration for the other areas, the other lots that are around this particular project, specifically Aspen Lot 14 and 15, the innovation lands. I'm confident that those properties are going to develop relatively soon, which will see an infusion of amenity contributions towards Pioneer and also bumping up the timelines. And I think ultimately putting money into our budget, budgeting line items that we're not currently seeing because we're not quite ready to have those in the budget. Thanks.
Thank you. Other comments? Councillor Hamilton.
Thanks very much. I'm happy to support the staff recommendation here. I think it's very clear that our community needs more affordable and more supportive housing within our district, and this is how it gets done. We've got just about every order of government contributing to this, including not-for-profit associations and organizations, both within our community and within our province, coming together to get this done. And these simple fee waivers are our small contribution to getting it done. So thanks for bringing this forward, and thanks for all the work to get this project, to get this application for project funding submitted. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Anderson.
Thank you. I'll also be happy to support the staff recommendation. There's been considerable gymnastics on the part of multiple partners to get us this far in this important project. Partners working with considerable constraints, and not least, as has been referred to, the scarcity of available lands for a project like this. Neighborhood interface impacts have been raised by members of the public. We, of course, do take these seriously in this project and in others. I feel that this will be more of a management issue, however, and as a management issue, there will probably be a role for our communications department in spelling out the district's role and objectives ongoing. We have examples of supportive housing projects in neighborhoods all around the District of Squamish, and they are success stories. We have success stories in integrating supportive housing in, for example, Wilson Crescent, Garibaldi Estates, and elsewhere, and people would hardly know about them. So I'm hoping that this, although it is a larger scale project, this will be in time another success story. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Pettingill, did I see your hands? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so I thank everyone for the discussion and the work on this. I will be voting against, and I will explain that. For me, I am still looking to understand whether the risk is appropriate given the massive pipeline, and so I am not able to until I have confidence that the risk is appropriate here, able to support it. Having said that, and if people are wondering why I push so hard on this and some of these issues, I expect that it will pass, and so if it does, I wanted to make sure it is as good as it can be. I think setting aside the larger Fortis pipeline, this does accelerate much needed infrastructure in the community. I think what's proposed is critical to make this project successful if it is going to go forward. I think it's important that we ask Fortis to fund this. At least they're part of the infrastructure removal. We are doing everything we can, our zoning and so on, to avoid fossil gas use in development generally. And I don't think it makes sense to continue to ask our community to take on the cost of managing Fortis infrastructure, especially for a affordable and supportive housing project. This is a case of the province downloading a number of services to us. And I'm torn there, even though people find it quite expensive to live here. Relatively speaking, we are very fortunate as a community, and I think we do have some obligations to go a little bit further in providing support to those struggling the most. We also, we hear about concerns around encampments and so on. And the way we deal with those things is providing more services and more supports. And so this is the way we address the concerns, valid concerns raised by the community, is providing more supports and more help throughout our community. I know this is technically not a referendum on the project, but realistically, this does impact the financial viability. And so I think it is reasonable to touch on those things. So I will say, were I not concerned about the risk of the broader EGP wood fiber pipeline, this would be an easy support for me. And so it is just that understanding that risk piece, which I hope we will achieve, and that I can be more supportive of this. That is the thing that is just causing me to, for clarity, vote against this. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? So I'm speaking in support of the motion. I think what we've seen already with the Pioneer Way extension, I think, is a creative way to advance our goals in a way that's mindful of the financial impacts. And the current state is much better than it was a few years ago before that work had happened. And I think that what's proposed here will be a step forward as well for the community and for the connectivity of the area. So that's as far as the north-south sort of alignment. And I think that what's proposed along the government road frontage will also be an improvement and improve safety in the area. So I think this is a reasonable course of action. And I really want to highlight the affordable housing piece is targeted for 100 units. And in the staff report, it highlights 50% of those are rent geared to income, 20% at deep subsidy rents, and 30% at low end of market. I don't think we'd be here having this discussion. And I certainly, if this was we need rentals as well. If this was a market rental, it'd be a different discussion. Below market is, in our normal sense, is also a challenge. This is impactful for the community if we can get this across the line. And I think that committing in this way towards this goal is appropriate and excellent value for money. And I'm really happy to see that we had the ability for the federal grant to be used in this way as well. I think that's great. So I'm happy to support. Oh, go ahead, Councillor Storm.
Yeah, thanks. I just had one other item that I wanted to address that I forgot in my earlier comments, which is this question of timing for this. And we've received some correspondence asking that we pause our decision. And I think it's important to speak to the timeline for the application for the Community Housing Fund, and the provincial funding application window closes at the end of July. And so just in response to those comments that we've received, if we decide to pause this decision, it would basically be the equivalent of turning it down. because we would miss the application window to the province and then we wouldn't be eligible for provincial funding. So while this isn't guaranteed go ahead, because we are still, obviously it depends on that provincial application funding decision. I do think personally from my seat here in this council seat, it's important that we at least get an application in and we put the best application forward. We know that the provincial budget outlook is not great. And so this is maybe not the last community housing fund envelope, but it's unlikely that we will see similar size community housing funding envelopes going forward. And so yeah, I'm just fully supportive of moving this ahead so we can get an application in on time. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll call the question. All in favor? And oppose? Councillor Pettingill opposes. Motion carries. Thank you.
Chair, I have one follow-up motion, if I may, just on one of my council colleagues' comments.
Yep, go ahead.
So I would also like to put on motion on the table that staff work with the project proponents to approach Fortis BC and request a financial contribution towards moving the gas line in 3990 Government Road. If that's seconded, I'll speak to it.
Councillor Pettingill, you're seconding that?
I just want to thank my council colleague for raising this, and I think I just wanted to put it in a motion to try and formally direct staff and the proponents at least to initiate that conversation. I think the money is there as presented by our last motions and the work with BC Housing in time for the application. But if conversations can start with Fortis BC or at least get them thinking about this and we can reduce that cost burden over time, that would be great. We would welcome that financial contribution from Fortis. And I do agree with my council colleagues' previous comments that this would be a great way for them to show up for the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments on this? Yeah, thank you for this motion. I think it makes good sense to at least attempt to have a conversation, and no harm in asking. And at the same time, I think it would be wonderful if we could find another way for others to contribute to this project. And this one, I think there's some solid rationale for. So let's see where this takes us, and I'll be in support. So I'll call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. So I'll move a motion. Our next agenda item is a motion to close. So I'll move that, and Councillor Hamilton seconds. All in favor? Motion carries. So we'll take a quick recess to get set up for the closed, and we'll be back in the closed. Council, you have a different link.